Hello, hello, hello. How are you today, Jeff?
Ooh, how's it going there, Alyssa? It's so good to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad to be doing episode number 3 of JavaScript Girl in a .NET World.
Okay.
And today, as you can all see, the glorious Jeff Fritz is here to help give me a bit more of an understanding of the .NET ecosystem and all things really just within it and around it and on top of it. So thank
It's
you for coming on today, Jeff.
not a problem. Oh my goodness. I'm always excited and happy to teach folks a little bit more about .NET and certainly to hear from you about some of the things that you struggle with as you're trying to learn some of these concepts that we've done a good job with and we've done a not so good job with explaining and trying to stitch together here.
I mean, so far, episode 1 had
Okay.
Sam on, and we talked about desktop development
Uh-huh.
and WinUI. And then
Mhm.
episode 2 was Ed Charbonneau, and he walked me through Blazor and kind of the history background.
Okay.
I feel, I don't know. So Sarah, you know Sarah, she's my
The Sarah.
the Sarah
Okay.
Fat cohort in crime. She was kind of giving me a tip off.
Uh-oh.
Um,
Okay. Okay.
she told me that Blazor is not just for webby bits anymore,
right.
supposedly. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about,
Yeah.
because I'm like, I kind of saw a peek into the desktop world, which I've never done any. And I saw a peek into like, okay, now there's this thing with Blazor and
Mhm.
web app development.
Mhm.
But apparently you can do desktop apps with Blazor. But I feel like we're kind of like going backwards because like at least the way the history was explained to me,
Yeah.
it was that this Blazor platform was the first time we were able to move away from desktop development and onto the web, and now we're allowing it to go backwards. I don't know. Can you clarify a little bit?
Sure. So let's talk about that for just a second. There we go. I changed my screen so it looks like I'm looking at you now. So here's the thing, right? A lot of folks have seen Blazor. I do a lot of Blazor on my stream. Ed Charbonneau does a lot of Blazor over here on this channel and over on his channel. Blazor started off as a very web-friendly technology, right? HTML interwoven with C# using a templating technology that we've had for a long time in .NET called Razor. So that's great for building websites, but there's a lot of folks that said, well, why don't we use the same technique of rendering and delivering content on WebAssembly with Blazor? Why don't we do that with desktop? So there was this idea of Blazor native that kind of floated around just after Blazor for web really started happening. And the more and more we looked at it, it was like, well, why don't we just, and folks said, well, I can do that. I can take this and do the Electron model, right? I can grab the Electron shell, the Chromium browser, and I can embed a web browser in as an application and put a little web server in it that serves Blazor content. Or do I even need a web browser? I can just run Blazor WebAssembly directly. I don't even need a server, just the browser. And right the same way that Electron shell applications run, like Slack and Visual Studio Code, Discord, these Electron-based apps. And that was kind of cool. But we said, well, we can do better than that, because why embed just a web browser in just a desktop application when we can put it into a Xamarin application? Now, Xamarin is our .NET technology, right? That many years ago, our friend Miguel Diacaza and his colleagues developed and put together so that you could build with .NET and target iPhone and Android and eventually Mac OS. So this evolution of that Xamarin technology is something that we call .NET MAUI. You may have heard some of the .NET folks talking about.
I have, and I was very lost as to where that fit in.
Well, it's just off the west coast of the United States. It's very tropical. It's very nice. Okay. So the idea with .NET MAUI is, well, you can build with XAML if you'd like, because a lot of folks that build with Xamarin really enjoy building with XAML, and folks in the .NET community like using that XAML markup to build desktop applications with WPF, WinUI, UWP. Well, let's take that same technology now and let's level up our Xamarin tools. Call it .NET MAUI, the multi-platform application user interface. framework and allow you to build for Windows, Mac, iOS, and Android. But wait, there's more. Because we got into this whole Blazor thing, well, let's embed and render the Blazor content as a feature of .NET MAUI. So now we as web developers, right? And Alyssa, you're like me, you're a web developer, and I can absolutely appreciate that because, dear Lord, for 25 years I've been building stuff for the web, and being able to even have that mentality of I can build a website that I can build using my web technology and deploy a mobile application and get something on my iPhone. That's like mind bending. I want to do this. I need to do this, right? And when I think about all the cool things that I've been able to do with Blazor, where I get to ignore a little bit of JavaScript, but that's okay. I can do C# front to back, and I can now embed it and have that same app run as a desktop app on Windows or Mac, or have it run on my iPad or on my iPhone or my Android tablet or my Android phone. That's where Blazor is going to land here in November when .NET 6 is released. But we got some previews now we can tinker with and see how that works.
Have you been tinkering? Have you tried it out?
Oh yeah. And it's fancy, let me tell you. The first time I took a component, a Blazor component that I wrote for another project, and dropped it into a .NET MAUI app, and it just worked. And I had it load in the Android emulator. I was like, this is a thing now. Like, right? There was like, I literally got up and was dancing like, I can make Android now, and I don't need to know Java. Like, building with Java in their XML markup. Like, okay, I learned how to do that. I've built one or two Android apps, never deployed them, but I've built them. But I mean, to be able to do that with my favorite languages, C#, .NET Framework, .NET 5, .NET 6. Oh my gosh, it makes me so happy to cross that boundary and be like, okay, now we can do this. Now I've got a lot here that's within my grasp. And when you think about, and I'm going to draw some comparisons here. When you think about coming in from Angular, right, and you've got all your directives and components that you've built in the past for other websites, being able to take that and reuse it to make a desktop app or a mobile app and get outside of that box that we as web developers normally live in, that some of us call the browser. It's so empowering, and knowing that there are tens of millions of web developers out there that are going to be able to take their favorite technology and make whatever application with .NET MAUI is an amazing thing.
So I kind of understand, especially with like the Electron comparison of like how you're taking Blazor and then kind of morphing it back into like, now we're in desktop land again. But I sensed a little bit of angst for WinUI and XAML whenever we were talking beforehand. And actually every single .NET developer that I've talked to who's in that ecosystem has made the same face when I have mentioned wanting to do WinUI. Can you just give me some backstory? Because I feel like I'm like, there's an elephant in the room and I missed it and I don't get it.
Sure. So let's talk a little bit about history of development on Windows, right? So WinUI is the new SDK. It's the new technology that the Windows operating system folks want us to use to build Windows applications. Now, that's not a .NET technology. That's a Windows technology that you can build with and target using many different programming languages. Fantastic. That's great. But when we think about the history of building with .NET and targeting Windows, WinUI is the latest on a stack of various frameworks and technologies. So just 8 years ago, when Windows 10 landed, it was Windows 10, we had the introduction of UWP, Universal Windows Platform. They actually originally called it Universal Windows Applications. UWA, but they decided no, it's a platform, UWP. All right, fine.
So no one says UWA. Like that's not a
no,
thing.
that's gone. But that was something like I was working on the team at the time that was deciding how do we integrate UWP into our package manager. It was originally UWA, and literally the night before they're like, no, it seems to be UWP. We're like, couldn't give me any notice on this. So so it's UWP, and UWP is very much the technology of what goes into Windows Store applications, and some of the technology that you see in Windows 10 for store applications. And okay, that's fine, but very much something that frustrated a lot of .NET developers, something that .NET developers weren't terribly excited about, because it basically pitched everything that we had been doing with Windows Forms and with WPF and said, no, if you want to be in the Windows Store, you have to build with this completely different technology.
Now, at the time, were there still reasons to use Windows Forms for other things?
Sure.
So like if you wanted to do store stuff, you had to do this switch to UWP, but otherwise you're still doing Forms, or could you use UWP everywhere, or what?
No, UWP only worked on Windows 10.
Okay.
So it was supposed to also work on Windows Phone, and we can pour one out for Windows Phone. I mean, come on. Love the Windows Phone. Alas, there is no more Windows Phone.
It's gone? Is it gone now?
Yeah, right.
Oh, I did not know it died.
Oh, yeah. And Windows Phone was tremendous. Like, think of all the things that are in phones now, and like the latest, coolest features that are being rolled out for iPhone and Android. Hey, look, on your start screen, when you turn on your phone and you slide to the left, you get right before you go through your lock screen, if you scroll to the left, you get these cool widgets and things that appear on your phone. That's exactly the Windows 8 phone screen. Like,
you're saying that like Windows 8 phone was like the thing that introduced the idea or concept of widgets?
The widgets as a home screen on phones. That's all it was. On the Windows home screen, Windows Phone home screen was widgets. Each one, you had little squares of widget content. You could put whatever content you want in there and click it, and it opens up into the full application. That's exactly what iPhone and Android have been building now for the last 2-3 years. Hey, look at these cool new revolutionary technologies. No, that's Windows Phone you're putting in there.
So UWP came out, and there was rioting in the streets and bloodshed,
rioting in the streets,
mass panic.
Yes, cats and dogs playing together. It was mass hysteria. No.
So what happened next? At what point were you like,
WinForms
is going down? Like, when did you?
WinForms isn't going down. So
WinForms not going?
No. So UWP was before WinUI. Before UWP was a technology called WPF, Windows Presentation Foundation, and this was one of the foundational technologies of Windows Vista. So there were 3 technologies coming out as part of Windows Vista: Workflow, Windows Presentation Foundation, and Windows Communication Foundation. Okay, so they delivered these 3 major technologies all at the same time. They were going to revolutionize the way you built applications because of how you communicate between different applications, how you build and scale and take advantage of graphical processor, which WPF does. WPF is very much coupled and works very well with the GPU to present amazing user interface that you can scale and take advantage of all the great GPU stuffs. But it was very much a betrayal of, before that, Windows Forms, because WPF was built with XAML. Okay. And WPF came out with a web version of WPF. They actually at one point called it, was it WPF UI or WPF Web? I forget what it was called, but it was something called Silverlight. Do you remember Silverlight? Yeah. That was in about 2007, 2008, those technologies came out. And about a year later, a guy you might have heard of, somebody named Steve Jobs, wrote his missive about plugins in the web architecture and damned Flash. Right? Do you remember this?
So like, I know it was like Apple-y / Stevie faults, you know, that like stuff went down because like at least the way I was told was like, yeah, so they don't want that on the iPhone, so it died.
They didn't want it because it was consuming a lot. It would consume a ton of battery. Very
so you're
processor
saying
intensive.
you agree with his misgivings about?
Yeah, I do actually.
Okay.
Yeah, for the purposes of his device that he was trying to protect and push forward, yeah, it was a processor hog. So Silverlight was very much in the same boat, competing with Flash, and folks stopped building for it. Yeah, this was going away. And actually, we just stopped supporting, or we're about to stop supporting Silverlight this year.
I know. I remember the sunset was coming soon, right?
Yeah, crazy that it's lived this long. But fantastic development framework of building things that were embedded in the web. But web plugins are no more. If it wasn't for Silverlight, yes, that's right, we wouldn't have had .NET Core. Oh, Kevin Griffin, how you doing there, my friend?
Hey, Kev, and hey, Aztec. Good to see you guys. What does he mean by that?
So here's the thing. Silverlight was built so that it would run cross-platform, so that it would be available on every browser, whether you're on Windows, Mac, Linux, or even the phone, if you had a plugin that would work there. So you compiled and wrote code in C# that would compile and run cross-platform. When Silverlight was being sunset and they said, you know what, we're just putting this in maintenance mode because folks are moving away from plugins for the browsers. At the same time, the .NET, not the .NET team, the ASP.NET team started building something called Project K. And Project K was this concept of, we want a cloud-based runtime that we can scale and move and update as quickly as we want, so that we can update and get people into Azure and build apps that are optimized for the cloud and Azure. Well, Project K was looking for a runtime to start with that could run on whatever optimized framework in Azure, which means Windows and Linux. Well, .NET Framework doesn't run on Linux, but Silverlight's runtime would. So they grabbed the Silverlight runtime, started adapting it, and that became Project K, which turned into .NET Core. So Kevin's right. Silverlight evolved and became, .NET Core. Which
do people get mad at you in your life? Like, do you find frequently that they just get so upset because your memory recall is just so good and it irks them?
I lived through this.
I don't care. I've lived through some things too that I could just not tell you anything about because I'm a goldfish and you're over here like facts and hard dates and these obscure names, Project K, like that nobody else knows. Like, how do you do this? So, no wonder you're an awesome programmer. Your brain is like,
thank you. So here's the thing. Project K was announced and they were talking about it at, Kevin, it was MVP Summit 2013. And I know this because the demos were absolutely amazing. Because literally they threw out everything that the .NET framework was and started fresh.
Okay, wait.
Go ahead.
Something like that similar has happened to me in my lifetime.
Yeah.
AngularJS, anybody?
Oh my gosh, you're right.
And it wasn't amazing. The community, I was there when they announced it. I was there in person. And they had these little tombstones. I just, to this day, still crack about this. Little tombstones that came up on the slide. And it said, like,
yes, I remember this.
RIP, like this feature. RIP, RIP, this feature. Like, all the things that were dying in the framework that they were, like, essentially just executing that day. And you're saying that it was a good thing whenever your community went through this? Like, what?
So the Windows application changes that we're talking about to start here. WinUI from UWP, from WPF, from Windows Forms, each one of those had zero compatibility with each other. So you literally had to rewrite everything. Project K came out, and it was very much, we're going to throw out a bunch of stuff from the framework, from the .NET framework, and down into Windows, because we need to get that layer, not the stuff you're programming, but the layer below what you're writing your code. we need to get that working on both Windows and Linux. And you know what? It'd be really great if it worked on the Mac also, because we know there's a lot of developers over there too. So we're going to redo this part, but we want to give you the same things above, the same ASP.NET look and feel with some updates so it's cloud optimized. But we want to stay as true as possible so that, just like you're saying, we don't have to go through a massive migration. We don't have to go through a massive changeover. So
you're saying it wasn't a rewrite situation?
It was a rewrite of the runtime and framework underneath. From there up, they tried to make it exactly. They tried to make it concept compatible. While it wasn't binary compatible, a lot of your source code would translate.
Okay.
And they've done things since then, actually, to make it binary compatible as well. That's kind of crazy. But this is the story of .NET is wild and woolly, let me tell you, and fraught with.
Did you just call .NET a mammoth?
with large tusks.
Woolly.
That's right.
So you're saying that I think that's why maybe it wasn't because for the Angular community, it was very much a rewrite at that transition. We have had where I think in 2 versions ago, the compiler was rewritten. And so that wasn't a change on our end, except for performance changes, right? But as far as your applications and how they're written, those were stayed the same. So what you're saying to me is when this came out, it was just basically perks all around.
Yeah.
With no thousands of hours of rewriting wasn't.
The initial version, the initial ASP.NET Core 1.0 and 1.1, you had to do some rewriting. There were concepts that you could bring over. There were the way that you wrote your classes, the way that you wrote your formatting with Razor templates for ASP.NET MVC, the same. And they even provided shims. They provided libraries that you could use and reference that had the same signature as what was in .NET Framework, the version of .NET that shipped with Windows, so that you could get up and running quicker on .NET Core. Fantastic. Great concept that the team, the engineers, moved with at that point.
Who's Fowler? People are talking about Fowler.
So the architect for one of the architects for .NET, he was the architect for ASP.NET, but now he's more an architect for all of .NET. Gentleman named David Fowler, brilliant guy, from Honduras, I believe it is, and when you hear David Fowler talk, do you remember? Pause for a second. Do you remember back in the 90s, 80s, you'd see movies where the Valley Girls were talking 3 speeds faster than everybody else, right?
Yes.
I'm gonna really date myself. It was like a 72 record that was on 48, right? It was like high speed. Oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe all the really cool things that I saw. It was just so amazing. That's how David Fowler talks. He speaks very fast because the man's mind is, he's brilliant and he conveys concepts very, very quickly because he's thinking through these things at a whole nother pace than the rest of us.
So you said he was the architect. Is he still on the team? Is he still?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So he's evolved from just web to all of .NET.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So he's basically .NET master architect, bro.
He is one of the lead architects. There are 5 architects for .NET, and he's one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Aztec said he thinks on a quantum level. So
kind of. So there's definitely something to appreciate there. Much respect to him, because a lot of the things that we as .NET developers use and the performance benefits that we realize, he came up with. So really great stuff.
So with this journey that you've taken me on, I still don't know if I see the angst
so
for WinUI.
Sure. So it's the Windows technology stack, the Windows application development stack has changed 4 times in the last 20 years.
I see. I see.
So it's how UWP, the Universal Windows Platform, very much a store thing. And if I don't put it in the store, how do I put it on other people's machines? Well, you have to side load it. Well, that's a whole process, and you can't exactly side load on just anybody's computer. I can't build a UWP app and send it to you to side load.
Is side loading just like downloading outside of the store kind of thing?
Yes, but UWP is secured. You can't do that. Also, if you want to build a UWP app and send it up to the store, you need to buy an account. Just like if you want to publish to the iOS or Android stores, you need to buy a developer account and publish it out there. Versus if I build a Windows Forms or WPF application, I can just send you an exe and a zip file, and you can unzip it and start running it.
I see.
So, right, you're prevented from side loading because they're providing security and confidence in putting it through the store, and that's great. And the folks that build that and maintain the store, they do great stuff to make that happen. But by producing and pushing out UWP, they've also created, what's the safe install? There's a safe install feature, I forget what it's called, that is, if you give somebody an exe to run on their machine, you'll get a warning that says, oh, I don't know where this came from. Are you sure you want to install it? You see this on Mac as well. Yeah. Hey, you downloaded this from the web. I don't know what it is. Are you sure you want to install it? That's effectively on Windows just crushed the shareware ecosystem. Right. The concept of shareware and freeware on applications on Windows was booming for decades leading up to about 2010. Then these types of technologies came in from the Windows team. Hey, we want to make Windows more secure, prevent, whatever malware from installing and running on your machine. Great ideas, but the legitimate things that folks may have downloaded and wanted to run, shareware, freeware, you get this nasty warning screen, and now what? So
Kevin said, let's talk about MSI building. What is that? What's MSI?
So MSI is an installer technology. So what that means you can do, right? When you're on a Mac, you just get the little thing that pops up. It says, drag this icon into apps, done. Yeah. On Windows, you have this installer technology where you have to go and place files, DLLs, in different locations on disk so that it knows how to work with Windows. It knows how to where to place things so that all of the files for that application are in one place. And typically, you put them into the program files folder, right? Program files / Alyssa's really cool app / and there's all your files in that folder. Well, you built an MSI, you built an installer package that had all the scripts configured for here's where to place all the files on disk. So building and configuring those was sometimes a bit of a challenge and something interesting to have to carry. And people build all kinds of installers now, not just with MSI, right? They build, I forget the other technologies, Wix and some other things that folks use, but that's
okay. Okay. Very cool. Well, I appreciate you coming on today with me. I'm so sorry. I'm like coughing up a storm over here. I'm having to mute every other second. But I didn't know if you had anything more that you wanted to talk about, or if you wanted to maybe hop over and do some Blazor. I know you had some cool things in Clip Talk that you did.
I did. So I mean, I very much appreciate and I'm happy that you're getting started. You're getting into the .NET ecosystem, learning about all the things. And gosh, being at Progress, you're right in the middle of the .NET ecosystem. Progress is a tremendous partner for .NET developers who want to build and have great user interface components. There's a handful of other component vendors out there also. They do a great job also. As a former Telerik employee, always thrilled to help out with Progress. But I think there's things that are confusing, and I want to ask you about that I want to make sure kind of makes sense and kind of fit together. I mean, going through Windows development and jumping into Blazor is one thing, but I mean, you're learning about C# and Razor templating And I don't know if you've gotten into entity framework and database interactions yet. No. Okay.
So no,
So
sorry.
that's okay.
So I haven't gotten to entity or database stuff yet.
Okay.
Is that Blazor world only, or is that also desktop?
It works everywhere. So right, these are some of the questions, some of the things that are interesting for us as .NET folks to bring people up to speed. Very much when you think about JavaScript and you think about when you want to build an application, you go out to NPM and you find millions of packages that are downloaded billions of times a day.
Yeah.
And good luck finding a nice cohesive set that fit together, unless they're blessed by somebody that, okay, this collection of things makes up framework X, right?
Right.
So there's very much a lean in from folks in the .NET development community that they want to see components, they want to see frameworks that go together to solve a problem, and they want them to be blessed by Microsoft. So Entity Framework is a database object relational mapper technology, very much like Hibernate, that you can use to interact with your database. And there's more and more that's happening with that, and we're getting into Entity Framework 6 here. There's binding, so you can work with it with GraphQL. I still don't understand why people go back to GraphQL, but that's a whole nother thing. We'll throw GraphQL under the bus another time. But Entity Framework is an ORM solution that folks wanted. Fantastic. Here it is. There's ML.NET. Folks wanted a great library so they could program and do machine learning. So there's ML.NET that allow you to build artificial intelligence models and interact with those. And when I look at all these things, somewhere in here, C# fits in, or Visual Basic, or F#. And my question to you, Alyssa, is when you see all these little frameworks and widgets, widgets is the wrong word, all these frameworks that fit together under the banner of .NET, is that confusing?
Oh, it's so confusing, especially when I'm trying to find documentation for, like, okay, I want to, for instance, Ed was showing me Blazor and, first time ever opening up Visual Studio and looking at how to create a project, because I've always used VS Code. And so they're
fantastic.
A little different, but
a little.
That's so opening up Visual Studio and then going through and being like, C# versus C++. And I was like, so that's kind of like the first hurdle of like, what's the differences between those? My basic understanding is that C++ is lower level, and that I've been told I don't need to worry about it to stick with C#.
Okay.
And so then I go, and from there, as I am opening up, like just creating like the default initial project in Blazor and then going through it and looking at it, it's a little confusing as far as like, if I want to like go and build and augment it and start developing, I don't know, because I hear this word of like .NET, but I'm like, where is the .NET? Like I'm looking at this file structure and I'm like, does this count as .NET, or does, because I remember it was either Sam or Ed that was teaching me about the .NET Runtime. And I think it was Ed, and how it's now, because of Blazor, the .NET Runtime can like work with the browser. And that's the whole Blazor ecosystem. And so to me, that in my head, that was like, okay, so that means that I don't actually write .NET ever. Like,
so, okay, there's a handful of things there that let's clear up and make sure that we get some good foundations on these terms. And I'm going to draw comparisons to JavaScript and the JavaScript ecosystem and how JavaScript runs. When we think about JavaScript, JavaScript's an interpreted language, right? It only after a linter runs against it, or you can copy your JavaScript directly into the browser and it runs there. So it's interpreted at that time, turned into code, turned into some binary instructions inside the browser or inside Node, right? We have it interprets and runs that,
When you
right?
say interpret, do you mean compile, or are those two different words?
Two different words.
Two different words. Okay.
It doesn't actually compile and put anything on disk that's binary that the machine knows how to run. .NET very much is a compiled language, but it doesn't compile all the way to machine language. It compiles to what we call bytecode, right? Because just like Java, it does just-in-time compilation.
BIT or BIK?
BYT.
BYT. Okay. I was like, did you say bike code? Like,
No, bytecode. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So, but it sits on disk, and then it'll be just-in-time compiled right at the time that you launch it, so that it runs appropriately and optimized for whatever machine it's from. C++ is the lowest level that you're directly addressing processor and memory. C#, F#, VB, the .NET languages are managed, just like Java. So you get that intermediary bytecode, intermediary language it actually generates. You don't have to worry about what that is, but it's a thing that it generates and puts on disk that eventually turns into machine code that runs. Where C++, you compile directly to a binary that runs on the specific machine that you target and you write with. Because with C++, you're targeting a processor. You're working directly with the processor and the memory. So 32-bit processor, 64-bit processor, that means something. How much?
Are there a lot of C++ devs in the community? Is it split? Like, what would you say?
So if you think about games, the typical game developer is a C++ developer. Okay. Typical, right? Probably 80 to 90% of game developers out there are C++ developers, because
so you're saying 10% are writing games in C#? That's a thing?
10 to 20% in C#, Python, other languages.
Okay.
But operating systems written in C++, because they're all directly targeting and working with the hardware, right? You want that native, nothing in between you and the metal. So C++. Okay. Interpreting and building things, being very productive, that's where you take a step up and you're in the .NET ecosystem. And I'm not going to reference the languages.
I feel like some C++ dev just took offense because you said
no,
you said being productive. Like, no C++ devs ever productive.
So there's a productivity that's given to you when you move from not directly addressing the processor to the managed languages, .NET, Java, where it'll do things like garbage collection, memory management. You don't have to do memory management in JavaScript at all, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's the only reason. It's the reason that we step up on any framework, right?
Exactly.
Like to have that distance and that productivity. So
exactly.
I wanted to make sure that they were feeling the love.
Oh no! Oh my gosh! Because they're managing those things themselves, they can take advantage of shortcuts and things that we kind of rely that the compiler is doing them for us, right? And before the JavaScript V8 engine, right, it ran really slow, but then Google released the V8 engine, goes into Chrome, turned into the Node ecosystem, right? The Node, it's not compiler, but the Node exe, Node runner. My gosh, now there's a lot more we can do with JavaScript. When you talk about runtimes, that's right. That is C++ runs directly on the metal. But when we think about, I'll take JavaScript first. JavaScript compiles and runs on top of some other code that hosts it and translates stuff for the processor, right? So that other code that hosts our JavaScript, it's a browser. It's Node exe, right? That is our runtime. That's actually running our code for us. Same thing with .NET. You compile it and it runs on top of a thin layer that knows how to turn our code into machine instructions for processor. So that's what a runtime is. Now, when we think about a runtime for a mobile phone, that's a little bit different, right? Like, okay, you open a browser on the mobile phone and it knows how to execute or JavaScript. Makes sense. But when you think about something like C# or Java, you don't have a runtime on the phone. You want it to be as small as possible.
I was going to say, can you have a runtime on a phone? Is that a thing?
You don't. Okay. So you have ahead of time compilation. So
Mm.
instead of compiling to that bytecode that'll adapt and run on whatever version of Windows or Mac or iOS or Linux, we're going to compile all the way down through and grab those pieces of the runtime we need, pull them together as one application to put on your mobile device.
It's kind of confusing because in the Angular world, like there's both. It's not like you are on runtime, you are on AOT. Like there are things that happen in both phases of your application boot up. And so
startup, yeah.
Yeah. Sure. Are you saying that like there's one or the other? It's like this whole desktop app is all happening in runtime. It doesn't have any AOT. So, or this Blazor app is all like, is it like that or no?
So there are ways to do that. Typically, folks don't do that.
They don't do what? They don't tell when things should happen.
Right. They kind of hand it off and say, okay, this application is running on the Node server and it's being handled inside a container, and do your thing over there. I don't care. I'm deploying my JavaScript files. Do your thing, optimize, go.
Okay.
I'm putting things into the browser that are going to interact with the HTML DOM, interact with the browser features, and how it runs when it gets out there. I don't care, right? You can compile things down. You can put binaries in there. You get into the world of WebAssembly and some other things, and it changes. Now, you were also asking about, well, how does .NET fit into this? Because we're talking about C#, we're talking about ASP.NET and Blazor. So .NET is the name for the larger ecosystem of all of these things. And it was born out of this idea of, I have a runtime that I want to run for several different languages. I don't want people to just build with Visual Basic or C# and have their own runtimes for those that you have to manage separately. Like, Alyssa, have you ever seen when you install an app from Steam and it needs to install the C++ runtime on your machine?
I don't think I've.
You don't have
not on my Mac, because I've used Steam, but I don't think it's done that on my Mac.
No, it doesn't, because it's already. Apple's very tight about the things. They keep it very tight, under tight control, those runtimes and things that run on the Mac. But when you're on Windows, you can install and have these various runtimes that support different programming languages and models. So when you install and run Steam on Windows, and you go and download Among Us or choose another. Among Us, I think, is a good one to pick on for a second, because it prompts you to install a runtime. Like in the middle of installing the game, another installer pops up and says, "Oh, we needed to install." I think it actually wants you to install a .NET 3.5 runtime. Like, okay, whatever, and it goes and installs a thing. It's putting down another runtime for you, and you can have many different runtimes on your machine, and that takes up a lot of space. And managing all of those runtimes is why we have .NET. Is we want to have one runtime.
So if they're doing that on your PC, but like I go to Steam on my Mac and it doesn't offer like that, what are they just not using another runtime, or like
they're packaging and delivering everything with the application. It's
Can
not
they
coming
not
down.
Do that on the PC as well, like as a better experience, like just package that runtime?
Now we can. That's one of the advantages of .NET Core, is we can. So .NET Framework, when you look at your machine, when you look at Windows, if you go into on your PC, on your Windows machine, you go to See Windows Microsoft.NET, and you'll see where the .NET Framework is. And it ships with Windows. It's on every version of Windows since XP. You'll always find See Windows Microsoft.NET. There's .NET. There's the .NET runtime sitting on your machine. And there's several versions of it as it's evolved. 1.1.1, 2, 3.5, blah, 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 all the way up to 4.8. Those versions have different capabilities for different applications. And if you wanted to install an application that didn't have the .NET Framework version that you needed on that machine, now you need to go and install that other framework. That's a pain in the neck. So just like you're saying, I want to be able to bring my framework that I need That was one of the features of .NET Core. So when I think about building things like a container, right? I've got a container application. I want to put just the things I need to run my application inside there. And I want my container to be nice and thin, right? Just a couple meg to download and install and have my application running. Well, inside of my Docker container, you can put into it just the parts of .NET Core and now .NET 5, .NET 6, just those parts that you need to support your application. And we call that the portable version of the framework because you're bringing along just those things you need with your application.
Is that just how things are going to be from here on out, you think?
So that is an option for how you deploy your application. Oh. You can also deploy what we call the shared framework. So it'll, just like for us as developers, when you download the SDK for .NET, it puts down the .NET Core and .NET 5 framework in a shared location that all the applications on your PC can use. That's an option that folks in enterprises who may have common applications you're rolling out. Okay, you know what? So we're going to put down the .NET Core 3.1 runtime on everybody's machine, and now we don't have to carry that 3.1 runtime with all of our internal applications.
Oh,
makes sense. So, but for us as developers that may be publishing out to whoever customer out there that might be using our application over the web, if it's a desktop application built with WinUI, if it's a web application you're going to deploy out to your favorite cloud service, maybe a nice fluffy blue cloud, you want to carry just those pieces you need because you don't know what's on the server. You don't know what's on the desktop. So you'll see people typically bundle those pieces of the framework. They publish their application so it contains that portable framework with them as they go.
Is there a way of saying if they already have it, like if they already have that runtime, use that version, and otherwise go download or offer a download? Like, is that a thing?
For publishing desktop apps, you know what? I'm not sure. Okay. I haven't dug into that with desktop apps. For web applications, the way to go is with containers and
having it prepackaged and portable.
Prepackage everything. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. I mean, it takes that whole concept of works on my machine, throws it out the window because you're literally delivering your machine, right? When you deliver a container.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah. Right.
So, all right, let me sum up real quick. So .NET, because the confusion was, especially like as I'm starting to dive in and I'm like, okay, I want to add this thing in Blazor, and I'm like, .NET component, .NET type, what am I looking for? And so .NET, you're saying, is more, it kind of sounds like two things. One, it's the ecosystem that all of this is living in. And two, it's also a runtime that has versions that I can go and find on my PC.
Yes.
And look at those versions.
Yep.
So I think that's the confusing part, because it's not just like this, like Jamstack, for instance. It's not just like a term to refer to this stack of technologies that you're using, because there is no Jamstack runtime, right? No. So it's like, I think that's where the understanding breaks down, because it is also code at some point.
Right. So, the whole .NET ecosystem, whether it's languages, it's application frameworks, it's different programming frameworks that you can use, like Entity Framework, ML.NET, ASP.NET, SignalR, Blazor, all of these things, they are components within the .NET framework, within the .NET ecosystem. And they all run on top of a .NET runtime that can be delivered and runs on your desktop, runs on your laptop, runs in your browser with Blazor. So you have, all of those things run on top of a runtime, and we just generically refer to it as the .NET runtime. So and you can deploy and run that wherever you'd like.
So if I'm in my Blazor application and I'm like, okay, I want to learn how to do thing X, whatever that is. Can you talk to me a little bit about like documentation and where you go to learn things and like not getting overwhelmed? Because I'm worried that there's, especially with all these different versions of .NET, like, can I go wrong? Could I potentially look up the wrong thing, or is it pretty easy to?
So the place to go for all documentation is docs.microsoft.com, docs.microsoft.com. And you'll find all kinds of references there for the programming language, for the various frameworks that ship with .NET, whether it's Blazor, Entity Framework, ASP.NET, all of those things. And it's going to be, pretty clear which versions you're looking at, because not only will it list for inside the documentation, it'll say applies to, and it'll list what versions it works with. But there's also a drop-down box in the top left corner so that you can search based on whichever .NET framework. And since there are so many different .NET frameworks that have been in existence over the last 21 years of .NET, you're going to want to set that to, Curious Drive is right. You're going to want to set that to .NET 5 to get started, because that's the current version we're using. And just like Node has a current and LTS support versions, we have the same model now for .NET, where .NET 5 is our current version. .NET Core 3.1 is our long-term support. The coming version in November, .NET 6, will be a long-term support as well. So everything you can do on .NET 5 will work on .NET 6.
Excellent. And thank you, Dex, for the kind word. And hello, Guacamole.
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 Guacamole. The green stuff that's made from avocados, developer avocados.
Guacamole.
That's guacamole. That's what it says. It's guacamole. Come on. That says guacamole.
I just have to say this.
Go ahead.
Because I stream with a ton of people. And it is so fun to stream with you, Fritz, because you are, you're so on top of chat and well, first of all, you can actually pronounce handles, which is really, it's really helpful. I butcher everyone's name, everyone's. But secondly, just how you, I don't know, you're not afraid to pull in the audience's comments, and it's very easy to flow. So thank you for being such a good host to your chatters.
Yeah. So Eggsy's here. There you go. How's it going, friend?
Oh my goodness. So
okay. And you've jumped in all the way into Blazor, which is here's the bright and shiny cool new toy. Let's do it. Let's take a look. Let's have fun with this.
What's another option though? If I didn't do Blazor and I wanted to do .NET 5e things, you're saying there's another path?
Sure, right? So typically ASP.NET technologies are built and render and run on a server, right? So just like Node, you host a server, it generates HTML, or it listens as a RESTful endpoint services that are listening and returning stuff that the server processes. You can do that with ASP.NET as well.
NitroEvil? Is that it? Did I butcher it? How do you say this person's name?
This is NitroEvil _ because there's somebody else named NitroEvil, and they have this name because they wanted the name NitroEvil, so they just put an underscore on the end of it. So this is NitroEvil _ this is Degs __, just to make sure that you're aware, right? I mean, let's make sure we pronounce these names properly.
Oh, that is beautiful. Was episode 1 where Alyssa got into
WPF and forms?
Yes, that was. Yeah, it was. With Sam. Which I'm still a little confused on because, okay, when people say, question, when people say forms, or is that the same thing as WinForms?
Yes,
it is the same. Okay, and I thought I heard a birdie tell me that WinForms was going away, or it already went away, but you said no. So now I'm very confused.
There are people will tell you that WinForms is being deprecated. People will tell you that you shouldn't use it anymore. Windows Forms is a technology that ships with Windows, and it's very much alive. That's right, Degs __. It's WinForms is going to be around for as long as there's a Windows, because it's part of .NET Framework. Okay. It's part of the way millions of applications have been built that have been around for a very, very long time.
But Guacamole is screaming Maui at you.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Because that's the new technology that is coming with .NET 6 that we're recommending people build with, because you'll get that cross-platform development.
Wait, does .NET 6 have both?
Mm-hmm.
It has both.
Mm-hmm.
Is that because the .NET developers love their community and they don't want to like take away their toys?
That's a very good way to say it. Yes, we don't want to deprecate things unnecessarily for folks. You're right. There's a lot of folks out there that have been building apps for a long time that we just want to help make their apps better. So if this is still working well, if Windows Forms is still working well, why not just keep supporting it?
Okay, so I think the hard part, because I've seen, at least in the JavaScript community, things that get deprecated, and they're pretty harsh. At least I think we're pretty harsh about it. Like we'll kill it off without even looking back.
Yeah.
And it's like, who cares? Who cares who needed this? Who cares who's using this? Like, we told you 6 months ago we were doing this. It's gone now. So I've seen this happen.
6 months notice. Are you kidding?
Yeah. I know. Okay. So like, I think it's because of how young we are, one, and how fast things tend to move. But also,
go ahead.
Like, how do you support things forever? Because like, wouldn't that be like infinite? Like, okay, so you've got WinForms and you're like boop, 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 boop. And then you got Maui. And now your tunnel starts to do this. And you start to have to like exponential more devs to like support both into the future forever. Mm-hmm. So how do you manage that, like, and balance it with like also wanting to support your community and what they're using? Like, what? Because that's, I think, why people in the JavaScript community are like, we just can't. Our team can't support this anymore. That's right. Because we want to move towards the new, the shiny, the Maui. Like, yeah. So, but is it just, do you really don't think WinForms will go anywhere? Like, you think they'll always be able to support both branches of this tree?
Yes. Oh. Okay. Here's the thing. If you look at Microsoft technology over the last 25 years, backwards compatibility is baked into our DNA on our culture, right? Like, seriously.
No, yeah.
When we saw the Windows 11 announcement last week. Okay, I'm going to pause for a second because I saw the way you reacted. Windows 11, right? There's a Windows thing coming called 11, right? We saw this, right?
I did not know.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Back up.
Can you tell me about this announcement before?
Hey, Alyssa, did you hear about Windows 11?
No. Now I'm worried because I'm on 10. Okay, so
that's okay. So Windows 11 was announced. It's not released. It was announced.
Oh, okay, cool.
Now, Windows 11 was announced, and it was announced that they're only going to support the last 2 generations of processor. So if you have a machine from 5 years ago, there's a pretty good chance that it's not going to meet the requirements to run Windows 11. Now, folks in the Apple community are like, well, duh, I don't go out and buy Mac OS Catalina and expect it to run on my iMac from 2010.
Right.
I've got my grape iMac sitting in a corner, and of course it doesn't run Mac OS Catalina. Yeah. Well, that's the Mac community. They expect, you know what? Yeah, that version of Mac OS doesn't support 2 generations back of the machine. Uh-oh, did we just get raided?
Hey, welcome, Raiders. Are we raided? Hi.
Hey, friends. So here's the thing, and I'm going to bring up so I can see the screen here. There we go. When we look at Windows 11, and we were only going to support going back the last 2 generations, and folks are saying, I have a machine that I bought in 2005 and I can't run Windows 11 on it. That's an expectation in the Microsoft community.
So people are upset about this? Yes?
Yes, there are people who are upset. And the team's going to listen and figure out where and how to adjust their Windows 11 requirements. But out of the gate right now, we're only supporting going back 2 generations. So I have an Intel i7 7700 sitting here. It can't run Windows 11. It's from 4 years ago. It can't run Windows 11. I've got a machine over here. This is what is this? A Ryzen 5900. Oh yeah, it'll run Windows 11. But it's the concept of backwards compatibility. Like you're saying, folks in the JavaScript community, they're quick to kill things off. This has been around for 6 months. I don't like it anymore. We're not supporting it anymore. Good luck. Goodbye. You have the source code. We're going on and doing something else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's the thing. You have the code, and people all the time are like, how could you do this to us? And it's like, it's called fork it and then just continue to use it and add your own features. And like,
Mhm.
I think growing up in the world of just kill it, just move on, just like restart, that being the norm. I look at the .NET community or the Windows community and I'm baffled because I feel like, wouldn't that slow you down?
Incredibly.
As far as like if you're constantly looking backwards, doesn't that slow your forward momentum?
Not at all.
It doesn't.
No, because
Oh.
instead of saying we need to change and rewrite something, everything is additive. We're not going and saying, well, I didn't like that feature. We don't approve of the way that feature X worked, framework X worked. We move on and add something that does it better.
I see. So it's like the snowball effect where you have this gigantic like feature set now because you're just constantly building and tweaking and adding versus rewriting the wheel 12 times like JavaScripters love to do.
And evidently that makes folks very, very happy to continue rewriting the wheel. However, as we pointed out earlier, when you look at NPM and you need to find a document formatting framework, okay, I know underscore, but mustache, what else? Right? I mean, there are dozens of these. Well, which one do you choose? Which one do you use? I don't know. But somebody's going to write a blog post that says, hey, I had really great experience with Lawnmower.js. Well, what's Lawnmower.js do? Well, it's a fantastic document formatting framework, and here's why you should use it. And that's going to get picked up by The Verge, and somebody's going to say, man, this is really great framework. And then a venture capitalist is going to go grab it and say, you know what? I'm investing in Lawnmower.js. Here's $100,000. Go make this happen because I've got a company over here that wants to use Lawnmower.js. And now Lawnmower.js is a thing. And finally people go, do I really need Lawnmower when I could be just using underscore?
Do you think it'll settle down? I always thought it was because we're so young, but hearing about like the background of like the .NET or the Windows community and how like they have kind of like this backwards compatibility baked in, and it's like a mindset from the beginning, not something they grew to. Do you think it'll always be this way, like with the web versus like JavaScript versus the .NET side? Or do you think that, because I always in my mind I was like, oh, JavaScript will settle down one day, like
no. And this is why a number of enterprises, quite frankly, they can't take the JavaScript community. When you think about an enterprise that's going to build an application that's going to run on your car, that's going to run and do enterprise resource planning, they're not building that application over the next 2 months and they're done, deploy and forget about it. I want to make sure we come back to Ergazia's question here from YouTube. And I'll come back to that in a minute. But when we think about folks that are building things with JavaScript, they're building and they want to turn around quick, right? They're not investing for a 2-year development cycle in something that's going to be around and run for 5 to 10 years. When we think about folks that are building in the enterprise, they want to build something and walk away from it, have it run for 5 to 10 years, return on that investment. And they don't want to spend inordinate amount of time rewriting, maintaining, and managing all the things that are in there.
So, I mean, it sounds awesome. It sounds exciting. It also sounds...
Is it exciting?
Yeah, well, from the fact of Goldfish.
Okay.
All right. So
okay.
I don't have a great memory recall. I don't retain a lot of things. And so I've literally like gone to blog posts I've written before and read them and been like learned something from myself, my past self. It's super embarrassing.
No, and it's not.
And so having this alternative world where it's it's less volatile, like, and so it's I think it would be easier for me to stick around a while just because of the way my brain works as a developer. I know there are devs like you who can just like rattle off everything you've ever learned, which is incredible, but it's more, I'm like, man, if I'm not using it, it's gone. And so it does sound exciting from that aspect of just being able to be at home and build and grow.
Constantly build on your knowledge base.
Yeah.
Right. You're not relearning and having to forget things. And there's absolutely something to be said for that. And there are some folks who love learning something new every other week because Lawnmower JS is out. We're now on Weed Whacker JS. Somebody got a real thing about landscaping around here. And fine, Weed Whacker handles my backslashes to / conversions great. I'm gonna go claim that Twitter account right now, Weed Whacker JS. And that's fine. If that's what makes folks happy, great. But like you said, there's a productivity turnover thing that's happening there on a very quick basis. Some folks enjoy, and other folks see that as a risk that they do not want to face, because the first question they're going to ask is, well, why did you ditch Lawnmower JS? Why is it no longer acceptable to you? Well, it doesn't do X, Y, and Z. Well, then why should I as a customer be using that framework, be using that tool? And these are the questions that we as developers have to ask ourselves when you publish and put things out in open source. Well, why should I be using that? If you're not going to be supporting it for the next 6 months, do you really think that Enterprise X, Y, and Z is going to invest in their $1 million software development project to use Lawnmower JS?
Yeah. No, it's I honestly, it's kind of the argument for Angular versus React right now. It's like it's a different scale.
Great comparison. Yes.
But as far as as something that's like Angular has been around longer, it has more of a defined feature set, for instance, built-in dependency injection, right? And then you've got React, which is very much the Wild West, constantly growing. You have to kind of build out your own ecosystem. You have to do that. Like those things aren't built in or decided on, which React devs like. But I've seen quite often, like you're saying, where enterprise consumers don't necessarily want the Wild West. They don't want to roll their own. And so I think that's why they might lean towards something. But I don't know.
And we're also talking about two very large software companies that manage those two frameworks. So of course, those two are going to spring to the front because there's a name behind there that they could say, you know what? Yeah, I want to use Angular because I know Google uses it. And Google isn't going to just make something available that they're not going to support because they need it for themselves. Gosh, Facebook runs so fast. I want to use the same thing that Facebook does. That's easy for me to sell to my boss because my boss uses Facebook and really enjoys it. So let's use React because of that.
Yep. So I see both sides. I just I don't know. I've always leaned towards the
that's okay.
The one that's like the monolith, I guess.
Okay. And
that's exciting to me because I do struggle with the constant rapid fire that seems to be happening. So I know there was a question about .NET or Flutter.
Yeah, .NET Maui or Flutter.
Right. But then before that, I also have a Maui or WinForms question. So maybe it's rolled in. Because for someone who's new and who's learning, who's getting into .NET, because you were saying, I think someone in the chat was .NET 5 is the way to go, which it's the latest. It's not the LTS.
The current one. Yep.
So that makes sense. Is it the same thing for WinForms versus Maui? If you're choosing?
So WinForms versus Maui, very much they're not compatible frameworks. You can't take what you built with WinForms and just drop it into Maui.
Okay.
But you can build business logic in classes and reference those same classes in both frameworks. And this is true with all of the .NET user interface frameworks. Somebody dropped a list of them in chat as well. Scrolling up here. Yeah, here, Curious Drive, Razor Pages, MVC, Blazor, Blazor Server, Blazor WebAssembly, WinForms, WPF, .NET Maui, Xamarin. You can build your business logic in class libraries. So just like you might have JavaScript files you include that are common libraries with business logic in it, you can do the same thing and reference from those from all of these user interface frameworks. But they have different ways to do things. So do I want to choose WinForms or .NET Maui? Well, .NET Maui isn't production ready yet. We're 6 months away. It's in preview, but it'll be production ready in about 6 months, in November. So you can certainly build things with it. You don't necessarily have a go live license from Microsoft where you'll get support. You'll be able to pick up the phone and call someone at Microsoft and say, fix this. Right. And that's one of the big selling points for .NET is there's support folks at Microsoft. You can literally get on the phone.
Oh, really?
Say, oh, yeah.
What?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
that's, I thought you were joking.
I'm not joking.
Okay.
Like I worked on a team that supported versions of ASP.NET from 2008 for a year or two.
I don't understand how many people do they have working for them? That's a lot. That's a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Like just to provide support like that for the community. That's okay. Cool. Yeah.
That's right. We do have a lot of people that work for us. There's a couple thousand people that work on Visual Studio in .NET. Yes. Instincts.
Gosh, you do it. Do this one.
Instincts at. How you doing there, Instincts at? If WinUI is full ready in .NET MAUI, I'm in. .NET MAUI, when it is released in November, when you target a Windows application that you want to publish your .NET MAUI application from, is Windows UI.
Okay, hang on. My brain hurts and I'm gonna cry.
Well, I got you there, friend. We can work through this. So .NET MAUI is an abstraction on top of several different user interface frameworks that run for iOS, Android, Mac, and Windows. The technology that it uses for Windows is WinUI. I know, confusing.
But can you use it with Blazor?
So that's the other fun thing here is when you build with MAUI, you have two different development models you can choose, right? So once again, we're getting into ultimate flexibility. Build your application how you want. You can use XAML, which you've seen. You did a little bit of work with Sam on.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, or you can use Blazor and install it and into your MAUI application reference, and it'll be hosted and presented appropriately for whatever platform.
Is this a thing that you can tack on, or is this a thing you have to do from the beginning?
What do you mean by tack on?
Like if I've got an existing application, can I be like all of a sudden, hey, I'm gonna use MAUI, or is it like you're gonna have to re-roll to use MAUI? Like what's the
hang on, I'm going to pause for a second here, and I got an answer to that bald-bearded builder that just wandered in. Look at that. When did we get Blazor Boy into the JavaScript world stream?
Is Blazor Boy a person? Oh no, I'm so excited.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Wait, are you like a superhero Blazor Boy? Is that what he's referencing?
Don't make me put on the jacket. Don't make me put on that jacket.
But if you don't have a cape, I know what I'm getting you for Christmas.
I don't have a cape. I have a jacket.
Got you.
I have a blazer. Oh, and let me tell you, I am making the Blazor builds Blazor TikTok. Because you may have noticed I have green screen here. Thank you. Yes, if we're doing JavaScript, it's only fair to go the other way too. Oh, wait do you see? So let me come back to that in a second. I'm doing the Blazor codes Blazor. So I have a wonderful chroma key background.
Yeah.
Alyssa, I bought a chroma key costume.
Oh, does that mean you're going to be in a green spandex?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
And it disappears on the background.
So here's what I need from you.
Go ahead.
I need a picture of you in the green spandex, not in front of a green screen.
No, see, that's not
just you in a green spandex.
That appears on the other. Yes, that's on the C# Fritz After Dark streams over on OnlyFans. It's bad enough they got me in a pool wearing a bikini over the weekend. Okay?
I could not believe it.
So
please, yeah, Aztec, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen,
and it'll be glorious. For Christmas, and it'll go with the barnyard animals.
Yep. There won't be a card or a description. You'll just open the box and you'll know. Like
I'll know. It'll be right there. It'll be a ninja cape, and I'll know it came from Progress.
You said you got one. Like, did it get here? Do you already have it?
Oh yeah,
excellent.
It's over there.
Over there.
here's the thing. I tested it out, put it on because it also covers my face, and put on the jacket over it. And it was just a jacket dancing in front of Blazor.
I was gonna say, aren't you just kind of like this floating ether?
This floating jacket. That's right. And it was amazing. I've got a GIF. I'll share it with you. Not right now, but
we should get you some green face paint. So you can just be a beard and eyes.
So now I'm going to back up and talk about the JavaScript girl in the .NET world. It's only fair to go the other way too. So here's the thing. I did for the month of May. I was raising funds for St. Jude Play Live.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I offered I'm doing a couple workshops. I'm teaching. I did a stream from the pool in a bikini. Bikini bottom t-shirt, that is. But I'm doing this. I'm taking the green screen costume and turning it into a clippy costume, the paperclip guy. I've got eyes and everything to put on. Anyway, so if we raise $10,000, I pledged to rebrand. I do months that I brand as various topics. I pledged to rebrand November.
Oh no.
To Nodevember.
Nodevember.
All November, and we raised $11,000.
Oh my goodness!
So that's right, bald bearded builder. In November, there will not be any .NET on my stream. It will be just JavaScript.
How exciting! Or maybe
I'm terrified.
Not. Maybe not excited. Maybe that's the wrong word.
Terrified. Okay,
that's gonna be awesome. Oh my goodness! How
exciting! It'll be a lot of fun. So, but right, that's very much I'm going to step out of my comfort zone and get into doing. And why did I go fuzzy all of a sudden? There we go. Get into that. November is Node. That's right. Does that mean I dye the hair green? No, it'll disappear on the chroma key. It'll disappear on the chroma key. No, I've already got it. Right, I've got it.
Have you tried putting green in and it messes with it?
I have the green hairspray and I tried it and it doesn't work. It kind of disappears. Not gonna lie. But
makes you look patchy more than anything.
That's right. Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness. Oh so, wait, I don't think we ever answered Poor and Six question.
So the other question was Flutter versus Maui.
It was Ergazi.
Yeah. So here's the thing: the folks that are making Flutter are former .NET folks.
I don't know about that. That sounds fishy.
Okay.
Is it really?
They're former folks that work at Microsoft in developer division.
Wow.
Yeah. Wait. Go ahead.
So, because I thought Flutter was
Google.
Mm-hmm. I'm confused now.
Yeah.
I'm confused. Can you explain?
Flutter is a technology that folks at Google have been developing and growing.
Yes.
So that you can build applications for desktop and mobile.
But you're saying it has .NET influences?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Folks that are working on the team formerly worked at Microsoft's developer division. They're great people. I have nothing but very kind words to say about them and the things they're doing. And both of these technologies have a similar ancestry, have a similar growth pattern, and that's fine. That's perfectly fine. Folks who've been working on Flutter are a little bit further along on how they build things, and that's great. However, I mean, Google's history with developer technology and developer support is just product support. It's a little bit checkered. I'm not going to lie.
What does that mean?
Google, just like you were saying about JavaScript and how folks like to deprecate things quickly, Google very much deprecates things very, very quickly, right? Like Google Hangouts, Google, not Chrome, Google Wave, Google, my goodness, right? How many, the fact that Android and Chrome have stuck around for as long as they have is amazing, right?
Wait, all right, so you're saying where was it? This one. You're saying you would go Maui because of history of support?
because of the prospect of long-term support, right? If I was independent, and I'm a Microsoft guy, so you can't read into it too far, I guess, but there is a commitment of support that happens when you invest and choose a technology. You want to use something, you want to be able to believe in something and work with it for a very long time. I mean, Alyssa, I've been programming with C# for 20 years. I haven't had to learn a new programming language in 25 years. That's ridiculous.
That's awesome, though. That's great. Yeah.
Like for my normal everyday thing. But I mean, okay, I've learned TypeScript, I've learned JavaScript, I've learned CSS, I've learned all these things, and that's fine. But day in and day out, I can rely on I know C#. Done. I can build and do all the things. With Maui, you need to have XAML to move around, I suppose. You can build with Blazor and target Maui. So yes and no.
Also, builder, think about the awful Angular beta and RC cycle several years ago. Yep. Welcome to RC2. The router is completely different. Good luck.
I remember this. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you had to rewrite everything, and they didn't give you any code or anything to analyze and transpile your code, to rewrite your code.
So I feel like it's relative, because you say that they deprecate things quickly, whereas I know JavaScript devs who think Google is super slow.
I know, right?
So
my gosh, they haven't upgraded Angular since last year. What the hell are they doing? They're taking so long. My gosh.
It's been 6
Chrome
months.
only updated. I only got 3 new versions of Chrome this week. What are they doing? They're slowing down.
So I think it's so funny, because it just depends on what side of the spectrum you're looking at it from. But I do see, as far as like, it is an investment, right? It's your time and your energy to go and learn something new, to convince the people around you, like, this is the way we're moving forward. Like, it's absolutely devastating and heartbreaking to have to just essentially kill something that you've poured your life into.
Oh my
God. So you obviously you want to safeguard yourself from that. And so that totally makes sense.
Alyssa, I gave all of 5 minutes of my life to build Lawnmower.js. I do not want to lose that.
Hey Ed, good to see
there
you.
Is. So right, and yeah, when you find a framework, a technology that makes sense to you, and David Henmeyer Hansen refers to Ruby on Rails that it fit his mind like a glove. That's such a great description of when you find a technology that you just vibe with, right?
Yes.
It's like, oh my gosh, this is how I think. I really enjoy coding with this. That's how I feel with Blazor. But and when you find that technology and somebody says, sorry, we're not going to support that anymore, we're discontinuing this, right? Okay, as an open source developer, I can take that source code and recompile it and support it myself. But then I also have to know everything that makes up that technology.
Oh, and not only that, but as like the web, or the hardware, whatever it is that you're working on, changes around you, you're where the buck stops, right? But you're everything for that at that point, versus having a community that's supporting you and feeding you help. So
and feeding you. I mean, at some point you got to get paid.
Yeah.
So that you. I mean, this is something that we as an open source community have struggled with, is making sure that creators get compensated so they can continue making those things. So, yeah, organizations that are able to pick up and support, whether it's Progress being able to support folks, it's .NET Foundation, Linux Foundation, JavaScript Foundation, that are able to pick up and support valuable tools and frameworks in our communities, it goes a long way. And then means we can rely on those technologies being around for even longer. So
I love it. I have, I think, one more question, and chat, feel free to shout out if you have any other questions before we wrap. But so as I continue down this road, because I'm gonna keep doing both, just because I don't know why. We came out with this library pretty quickly for WinUI at Progress, a component library.
Mhm.
And I kept hearing about the talk about that internally. And that was really the thing. Like, obviously I've got like some stellar Blazor people on our team who do some amazing things, but it was the WinUI, like, that I don't know what it was about like WinUI, but I was just like, man, that sounds really fun. I want to try desktop development.
Okay.
And even like writing in like XAML, which for some reason people are hating on, but I'm like, it looks like SVG. Look, let's do it. So I'm going to keep going down both paths.
Okay.
And just keep learning and growing. But is there anything, because there are a lot of options, as we've talked about today on the show, is there anything like other than lean towards the latest, you know, like as far as like .NET 5, or maybe choose MAUI over diving deep into WinForms, or maybe learn WinForms? Like, is there anything like as I branch and grow that you know, like to just keep me on the right path, or is there no going wrong?
Get a good sound understanding of C#. Build and just like you may have done with your Angular work in building directives, building libraries of things that you can include and reference. Figure out where those points are where you can build components, and build libraries of things that will regularly do additional things. C# generics and links, I wrap that all up in get a good solid foundation of C#. Generics and link, the first time you work with generics and link, and I know actually they don't have a link type technology in JavaScript, I don't think, where you're able to take a collection and do like for each or aggregate functions across the collection easily and quickly.
Really glad you pronounced that before I did, because that's
LINQ. Yeah, link.
I would not have known. Okay, thanks.
So, and okay, quick story, right? Here's just how Microsoft marketing, at the time that LINQ, language integrated natural query, was introduced, they also had another technology out there called link, LYNC. LYNC was it was what became Skype for Business.
Oh, okay.
That was Link Messenger before that. But at the same time they released it, they released Link, language integrated natural query. Like, we couldn't name these two different things, could we? Oh no, they're different, because the one is all capitals, it's an acronym for a programming thing, and the other one is capital L lowercase YNC. Like, are you, what, didn't you talk to each other? So and that's fine. It's worked out now, because link is no more, and link is, and we continue to use it. And you're going to find working with collections of objects is so much easier to do with link technology.
Well, I'm excited. I love that tip, because that was one of the things I feel like I did wrong. Was I learned of like a framework before I learned the language that the framework was written in. So that can kind of still get me sometimes, because I'm like, is that Angular? Is that JavaScript? Who's doing that?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Right. Gosh, tell me, Alyssa, did you ever see folks that said, oh yeah, I know jQuery, but I don't know JavaScript? Right? Like, that was a thing for a while. Oh yeah, I know jQuery, but I don't program in JavaScript.
It's there. If you take away jQuery, it makes sense in the fact of if you took away jQuery from them, they wouldn't be able to get the same like thing done, because the syntax is totally different. But yes, it's the same language.
Oh,
it's
I program in Angular. I don't know JavaScript.
Yeah,
that's a thing.
So I love it. I love the tip of getting C# basics down. Is there any like tutorial, or just like, I mean, I was just gonna head to the docs, but
there's something. Docs, but I did a series last year where called Learn C# with C# Fritz, and I did a series of Jupyter notebooks. I briefly mentioned this. This is so cool. Jupyter notebooks is something that ships with Visual Studio Code, that you can run directly inside the editor there, or you can actually run it inside the browser. So you can go to do I open a browser? Do I send you a link and you can open a browser there on your side?
Yeah. Send me a link in private chat, and then I'll click on it and open it and show it.
So, right, that URL. Yeah. So this is the URL for my C# with C# Fritz series. If you head there, there is a button. That's a GitHub link that I sent. You were looking at that vid today, Aztec Consulting? Oh, yeah. Yeah. There is a link right at the top that says, of the README, that says Launch Binder. Yeah, there you go. I know that guy. See it right under the title. It says there's a button, Launch Binder, in the README. There you go. So Binder is an online tool that will run your Jupyter notebooks live in the browser. And what this will let you do is, I wrote a series of 10 of these notebooks that are all interactive. That'll teach you basics of C# with a whole lot of pros around them, code that you can execute and tinker with, and you won't break anything. It's all running in your browser. And they're a nice way to get a foundation for how to use some of these language features. Now, there's more modern things that I didn't include in these, but basics like things about link, building methods, how to interact with properties, switch statements, interacting with, I don't think I did files, but this is taking a real long time to start. Thanks so much, Binder. You'll be able to interact. There you go. So, yeah, there's 10 of them there, 9 of them. So you can click into the first one there, first session, and it'll open up, and it's got a whole bunch of code and a whole bunch of description about how to interact and work with types and what C# is. And it's a great series that we presented live on stream, and you can, if you want.
Oh, that's so cool!
And watch this face talking for 2 hours about each one of these sessions. You'll
this
be able
is
to.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I had this idea at one point of, well, let's take these notebooks that I wrote and I've tuned a bit and turn it into a real book. Like this would be a book published, and it's 40, 50 pages of get started with C#. So your place had a little Tetris thing, Fuel Snable, to play with while the notebook was loading. That's kind of cool.
Oh, that's funny.
That's cool.
This is so cool, because that was this like first question, get C# running locally. That was kind of my first thing. I was like, but how do I do C# outside of things or inside of things? Or am I just in a terminal somewhere? So
Exactly.
This is awesome. I'm so excited. So did you make
I wrote
Jupyter?
No, Jupyter is a group. The original Jupyter notebooks were Python based, all Python, but they provided the ability to swap out the kernel that lives inside of it. So instead of it running just Python, this now runs .NET. There's also ones that'll run JavaScript. There's also ones that'll run Java, I thought. But you can poke around and install and have them run and teach all kinds of different technology, or you can also have them set up and be effectively little reporting notebooks. Write a bunch of text about, hey, we're reporting on, I don't know, the interactions on our Twitch stream, and we want folks to be able to see and see some reports about that. So you write up a little bit of a report, and then write some code that fetches data and formats it as a graph or something in the middle of the notebook. And you now have this nice little document that you can print out as a PDF, re-execute later if there's more data coming in later, and actually turn into a living piece of code-driven documentation.
No, I love this so much. This is exactly what I needed, and this is where I'm heading next.
Cool. And please let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to help you out. You know how to get in touch, and be happy to answer questions, get you moving in the right direction here. My goal is always just to make sure folks are successful with tech. Whether it's if you're using my favorite tech, C# and Blazor and all that, fantastic. If you're using Azure, you're using the Blue Cloud, that's great too. But if you're having a great time with Angular, more power to you. That's not my thing. I can't help you with it, but go forth and be merry. And then help me with it come around November, right? So.
Goodness gracious. I apologize for all the coughing, everyone. I love you so much, and I could not miss today's stream, but I am about to go die. So I'm
Take
gonna
it
go
easy.
take some more Robitussin
There you
and
go.
lay down on the floor. That's the plan. That's where we're at in my life. So, but
Let
seriously,
the dog wander over and
yeah, and just he looks so concerned. He's actually afraid of my coughing, and he's like fireworks is how he treats it, and he's like looking at me, and I'm like, I'm not doing it on purpose. So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
very amusing. But
When
I
you want to jump into Blazor, we want to get into some more of that stuff. Please give me a call. We'll have some fun
absolutely
with
will.
that.
I'm gonna schedule one. So I want to do the C# basics, and then maybe I'll have a couple shows where I'm kind of talking about those as I learn and build and create with that. And
Cool.
so this is an absolute beautiful resource that I will be sharing. I put it in the chat. Everyone check it out and share with friends. But yes, I will schedule a Blazor episode with you.
Fantastic.
Down the road.
Yeah,
So.
let's do something. And I've been very thankful to you and the folks at Progress for the help that you've given me with Clip Talk. I just pushed a big update today. I actually deployed it into data centers in Europe and Asia today as well. But there's a new dashboard on the streamer pages that makes extensive use, and our friend Ed Charbonneau there in chat helped out with getting the tile layouts in there, along with some there's a radar chart and a column graph in there that you can see all about how folks are making clips and interacting with those clips on Twitch.
That is exciting.
Yeah.
Congrats, man.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the help that your team has given with that. So
Very, very cool. Well, I think that is it for
that's
Tuesday.
the stream.
JavaScript Girl on .NET World. Thank
All
you
right.
so much, Fritz. And I don't know, Fritz, do you have anybody that we can raid? Do you know?
I have anybody that we can raid? Let me take a quick look-see here. There's this coded oh wait, that's you. Let me see here. I have a list of people that I like to raid. Going down the list, we could raid. I was going to say, I don't know. I'm torn. There's a couple folks that I would consider. IBM might be fun to raid, but Lightbend and IBM developer. I don't know what that is. AWS is streaming right now.
Ooh.
We could go raid AWS.
Let's see. I am checking to see if I have.
Our Chicken Life is. Don't do that. Chicken Life.
Let's see. Ed, can you handle the raid for me? I'm not signed into. So I'm still getting my PC set up, and so I'm not signed into Twitch on this machine. Thank you, darling. So let's do AWS, unless there's anybody else that you'd rather do. Oh, Guacamole said Code Warrior is also going. Or Fuel said Javid X9. I don't know if anybody knows these people.
I do. I know Javid.
Anybody? Any preferences, Fritzy? I'll let you. It's your call.
No preference.
No preference. All right. Ed, what do you think? I'm gonna let you pick. Thank you all so much for making the chat fun and for sticking around. This is a really cool series, and I'm so excited to learn more and get into this community. So yeah, I appreciate you all. Okay. I think Ed might be ready. Are we ready to raid? Awesome. Javid is queued. That's where we're going. Well, thank you everyone so much. Have fun, and let's give Javid a warm welcome.
Alrighty, we'll see you.
Mwah.
Take care.